Welcome back to Unirunner Video Drum Lessons for March 22nd, 2007. My name's Darren Mathis, and today I am going to read an email that I received from Cassie in Lemoore, California. She writes, "Hey Darren, I have the Drummers Cookbook and I really love it. It's really helping me learn independence and a whole bunch of different beats. But I'm having a hard time playing the beats with 16th notes. Do you think you could demonstrate some of them in a video? Thanks." Well, thanks a lot, Cassie, for your email, and sure thing. I'd love to demonstrate some of the beats in the Drummers Cookbook. Actually, this is a book that I've had. I was just looking at some of the marks that one of my drum instructors put in there from 1989, so it's almost 20 years old. But this is a great book. It's still available. So I'll show some of the examples of beats that have 16th notes in there, and I emailed Cassie back and asked her which exercises she wanted me to take a look at, and so she gave me a few different ones: a simple one, a complicated one, and a busy one. So let's look at the simple one first. Is this one? It's number 11 on page 14. So I haven't really practiced these too much because I wanted for you to get a sense of my approach to how I learn these beats that are in this book. And this book is just filled with beat after beat. Basically, it'll have a pattern for you to play on the ride cymbal or hi-hat. It's usually 8th notes or 16th notes, and it says once you've learned a pattern playing 8th notes on the ride cymbal, then try it with 16th notes. So let's look at this exercise number 11 on page 14. When you look at that, it can be intimidating because there's all these notes going everywhere. It looks really complicated, but let's just look at the bottom two lines. That's the kick drum and the snare drum. And really all you've got in this pattern are two different kinds of notes. 16th notes and 8th notes. Actually, there's a dotted 8th note in there too. But and I talked about these notes on during my last two podcasts. So if you want to take a look at those, that might be a good refresher for counting 16th and 8th notes. But just to remind you, 16th notes are counted 1 eanda, 2 eanda, 3 eanda, 4 eanda, if you have 4 beats in a measure. 8th notes are counted 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So if we take a look at those bottom two lines, kick drum and snare drum, here's how I approach learning this. I would just look at those two lines and figure out what the rhythm is. So the first figure there, we've got a 1 E and a, so it's a 1 E and a. I'll just play that on. I'll just play the two lines on the snare drum. So if I were to put all those notes that are on both of the bottom lines on one line, the rhythm would be this. So it's 1 E and a 2. Or 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and 4 E and a. So now it's just a matter of splitting it up between the kick drum and the snare drum. So it's and so what you're going to want to do is just play that with a hi-hat going on 8th notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So that's what I'll do to get introduced to the beat, is just kind of look at the rhythm and just play it on the kick drum and snare drum before I try and put the hi-hat in there, just so I get a sense of how it sounds. And you're gonna want to approach these exercises really slowly. Like I'll approach it maybe this slow just to start out. I'll throw the hi-hat in there. It may be less challenging or more challenging for you to play 16th notes at the same time. If you play 16th notes, you'll notice every time you hit the snare drum or the kick drum, it'll land at the same time you're hitting 16th note on the hi-hat, because every one of those notes on the kick drum and snare drum lands on a 16th note that's somewhere in that beat. So let me play it again with the 16th notes on the hi-hat. 1 E and a 2 E and a ready, and here we go. So I would recommend just starting off really slow with either 8th notes or 16th notes. Sometimes it's more challenging to play 8th notes on the hi-hat because lots of times our right foot might get locked into what our right hand is playing. So if you play eighth notes, you're going to be playing things on your foot at times when necessarily you're not going to be playing something on the hi-hat. So once you get that worked out, I'll just keep going over it real slow. Maybe play a beat of just straight 4, kind of a rock beat in between, alternate between just a straight rock beat and that measure like this. So you can see how playing these exercises in this book, and there are just hundreds of them, are really going to help develop your independence and ability to play whatever rhythms might pop into your head at a given moment. So once you've got that down, what you're going to want to do is get that hi-hat in there on 2 and 4 while you're playing the ride cymbal. So I'll play the same beat. This will be the next step, because then you're throwing in the hi-hat on 2 and 4. So I'll play the same beat on the ride cymbal. So it can be a challenge to just keep looping that over and over. So that might be the next step you want to try. All right, let's move on to the next exercise that Cassie mentioned. She's looking at something busy like number 80 on page 19. So it's a little bit busier, as she says, because you get more notes on the bottom. But again, these are just 8th notes and 16th notes. Actually, you've got a dotted 8th note there on the 2 count. So again, let's just play the bass drum and the snare drum part. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. So I'm just counting 16th notes there, and you notice every note falls on a 16th note somewhere in that measure. So that gives you the general feel, and then try and incorporate the hi-hat. So that's going to be a major challenge for some people, is to keep that hi-hat, those 8th notes, on autopilot while you're playing things on your snare drum and your kick drum that don't necessarily land at the same time you're hitting the hi-hat. But that's where you develop independence, that disconnect, where you're not, one limb's not relying on the other to hit something at the same time. So the more comfortable with that you get, the faster you can go, but it's best to start out slow. I think right at the beginning at the book he suggests a tempo. John Pickering, who wrote this book, says the figures in this book were designed to be played no faster than between 112 to 120 beats per minute. He says any time spent trying to play these figures at ridiculous tempos is wasted. He says as a general rule it'd be advisable to play every figure at many tempos ranging between 60 and 112 beats per minute. Alright, well, let's look at this last exercise that Cassie mentioned, and it's number 38 on page 41. And this is, she mentioned, is a complicated one. So again, let's look at the kick drum and snare drum, and I'll play them and count them. 1 and 2 and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. Again, 1 and 2 and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. So you've got that right on the 3rd count. You've got a 16th note rest. So 3 E and a is how you play those 3 16th notes that are attached there. And I'll throw in the hi-hat. It's got some syncopation there at the end. You're playing, you notice the last 2 kick drum beats are on the 16th, or on the the E and the of the 4 count. So we'll play that one with the ride cymbal. Like I mentioned, I've had that book, The Drummers Cookbook by John Pickering, for about 20 years now. So I set up a link. If you go to unirunner.com/products, if you're interested in picking up this book, there's a link there. If you click through it and buy it through that link, I'll get credit for that and you'll help support Unirunner Video Drum Lessons. Otherwise, thanks for tuning in, and I'm going to take it out the best way I know how once again. Till next time, keep practicing and God bless.